particularly significant. I think the market was set up for a hawkish speech. He gave, for all intents and purposes, a somewhat hawkish speech. But to me, it's more a little bit of sell the rumor, buy the news. So the market was weak over the last week leading up to this. Now I think this pullback is probably an opportunity. And we're really focused on what happens in September. And we expect for the Fed to finish its front loading of 75 basis point rate hikes with September's meeting. And we think that's going to mark the peak of the dollar. And the dollar is really the thing, the catalyst, the asset that we're watching most closely to give us guidance into all the asset classes, commodities, bonds, as well as stocks.
Do you think that the Treasury 10-year could be in a 3.7% because Federal Reserve in September could hike interest rates 75 basis points?
Yeah, the 75 basis points. Remember, right now the Fed funds is about 2.5%. So 75 basis points would put it at about 3.25%. And I think that's well within the realm of where the 10-year could be. We're also watching the 2-year kind of carefully, and the 2-year peaked back in June when we believe inflation peaked in June, Fed hawkishness peaked in June, and then the 2-year was at 3.45%. That was the highest yield it got to. Today, I believe it hit 3.44. So we're right up against that level. But the short end is really where the action is going to be more than at the long end. We do think that, a 10-year at 3.5 or so is, perfectly fine and well within the realm of possibility.
Joseph Stiglitz talks 2 days ago in an interview about if Federal Reserve it's in the same team than the reduction of the inflation. Do you think that Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, has different options about inflation, or there are only one way?
Yeah, I think that's a really key question, Jose. And our view is that we think the Fed is going to validate a high nominal growth world. We're in a high nominal growth world, right? Nominal GDP in the second quarter in the U.S. was up 8% year over year. Very similar number to in Europe, by the way. And that is supporting earnings and sales. Sales and earnings are in nominal dollars, not real dollars. And that's why we believe that the earnings are going to be okay, which is why we don't see a lot of downside risk to stocks. So we think when inflation gets to 3%, we expect the Fed to validate that high nominal growth world, accept inflation at about 3% and not try to drive it down to 2% because it will create more economic damage than is necessary. And we believe the Fed will be able to do that because of several reasons. One, there's an aggressive fiscal tightening going on in the U.S., which gets very little attention. It's one of the most aggressive fiscal tightenings we've seen in decades in the U.S. And then secondly, the well-anchored inflation expectations in the U.S. will allow the Fed to declare victory at 3% without creating a lot of anxiety in the markets. And so our view for 2023 through 2025 is a high nominal growth world validated by the Fed, supported by a global capex boom to deal with what we call the 3 C's of COVID, climate, and conflict, and underpinned by what we expect to be strong productivity gains across the globe. And that's a constructive environment for risk assets, particularly in emerging markets, non-US equity, and commodities, because we expect a dollar decline to really catalyze these moves.
Thank you very much, Jay Pelosky. Good day, good business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jose.